Hey, how's it going? Watching Peach's video where she talks about the upcoming fundraiser put together by DevShell to benefit international AIDS organizations reminded me very strongly of my own fundraising efforts to help agencies that work with people with HIV and AIDS. The events that I participated in were bicycling events, charitable events that involved people riding their bikes. The event was called the Paradise Ride. It was held from 1998 to 2005. Every year in the month of July, it lasted a week. People would be riding their bikes around islands such as they would ride around Oahu, and then they would ride around Maui, Kauai, the Big Island. After the first, I think, couple of years, the Big Island agency decided they didn't want to participate anymore, and so that left Oahu, Maui, and Kauai. So the event could have you riding your bike on Oahu, Maui, Molokai, and Kauai, and in the last year, Molokai was taken off the itinerary, and we simply rode our bikes on Oahu, Maui, and Kauai. So it started on Oahu and in Kauai. We traveled between islands. From Oahu to Maui, we'd be traveling by plane. Between Maui and Molokai, we'd be using inter-island ferry. And we'd go from Maui to Kauai, and then after we were done on Kauai, we would fly to wherever we had to be, back to the mainland or to Oahu, wherever you lived or wherever you wanted to be afterwards. The 2004 event was something I got interested in after I first heard about it, because I had never ridden my bike that much up until that point. I became a bike courier, and I would ride at an average of 40, maybe 60 miles a day, depending how busy I was. This was the opportunity to see if I could really handle riding 360 miles in the span of 5 days, averaging 60 miles a day, every day. Overnight, we'd be sleeping in tents, and we'd be eating our meals off of paper plates. It was quite an experience. What was really interesting for me, being heterosexual, I'm used to being in the majority. Wherever I happen to be, if I'm in a crowd of people, the odds are pretty good that the vast majority of those people will also be heterosexual. At the Paradise Ride events, while you would have majority of the women would be heterosexual, but you also have a few lesbians there. Among the men who composed the majority of the Paradise Riders, which is what we were called, most of the Paradise Riders, male Paradise Riders, were gay men. So in my first year, it was an eye-opening experience, because here I was, a straight man, suddenly in the minority for the first time in my entire life. For the first time, I could look out into a crowd of men that I was standing with, and I would know that most of them were gay, and I was now the minority. The tables had turned. I didn't know how well I would fit in with this group, but I was accepted as a fellow rider, and over the span of the week, we all, the majority of us, became very good friends. That you would share the last drink of water out of your canteen, the last energy bar out of your bag. You would give it to another rider. You wouldn't even have to know that person. Someone was on the side of the road with a flat tire. Even on the ride, I carried my tools with me. I would stop and I would help that person. I wouldn't even know the person's name. And I know that if I would be in a similar situation, people would stop and help, and they did over the span of 5 days. And this is something that is rather typical for cycling events that involve raising money for an AIDS organization. Uh, Rides such as the Life Cycle, which is held in California, the ride between Los Angeles and San Francisco. The riders in events like that tend to bond together emotionally. They become very close to each other because they're raising money for a disease which has been socially stigmatized pretty much from day one. I have ridden in other events for other charitable organizations, such as Tour de Cure, the American Diabetes Association. When I was on the Tour de Cure in 2004, after the Paradise Ride, I was really taken aback by the extraordinary difference when I would try to chat with the other riders in the Tour de Cure or try to engage them in conversation, either at a rest stop or after the ride. People tended to keep their distance. It's like, I'm just here to ride my bike and raise money for the Diabetes Association. I'm not here to make any new friends. And so the Paradise Ride was fairly typical of AIDS fundraising events where the riders did become friends. And for anyone who's thinking, there's no sexual orgy type behavior going on. There's nothing untoward. No one in the event made me feel uncomfortable in any way. No one tried anything. For all you people who think that gay men are aggressive and predatory, everyone was very respectful. And I met, it was really interesting that people, for some reason, have this idea that gay men are all flamboyant party animals. There were a couple like that I ran into, and others who were just ordinary people, about as interesting as the average person. And there were some that I met who were just plain boring people to be around. Because there was one guy who was really, really nice, and he was a friend. I helped him out over the days because he wasn't really in the best physical shape. And one day we were sitting there eating lunch, and he asked me what I do for a living. I told him, and I asked him what he did for a living. He told me, and he worked as an investment banker. No, I'm sorry, he worked as an accountant. And he started telling me about his work. I have to say that it was the most boring conversation I've ever had in my life. And I couldn't get away from the conversation fast enough. But when, he needed help over the course of the ride, I would help him without hesitation. I just knew better than to ask him about his job. There was another incident where we were on Oahu, and we were going to fly off to Maui, and then from Maui we're going to get the inter-island ferry and go to Molokai. And this person had one of those bracelets to help him with seasickness, and he had lost it. We had camped overnight. We woke up the next morning, and he was starting to panic because he knew that he would get so seasick that he would be unable to continue the ride, that he would have to basically just go home. He was scared to death to get on the boat because there's no way to travel. There was no way for us anyway to travel from Maui to Molokai without a boat. There was no air service. And so everybody, about 100 of us, started looking. We looked all over the ground. We looked in the tents. We went through our own stuff to see maybe if we accidentally picked it up. And so when the director came up and told us that we had to get on the bus because we had to leave and get on the plane to go to Maui, everyone basically responded, no one's going anywhere until we find that damn bracelet. This was a bit tense, but they understood. And And the guy found his bracelet. He had accidentally packed it in his luggage without knowing it, and so he had spent all that time looking for his bracelet for nothing, which is fine. We had we had bonded together rather quickly. And 2004 was, a lot of fun. There was an overnight dance on the island of Maui. It was a lot of fun to sit and watch. I'm not a dancer, and so it was a really, really good experience. But between the 2004 event and 2005, there was the tsunami, which swept across the Indian Ocean, and people's charitable dollars were going to help in those relief efforts. So raising money for the 2005 Paradise Ride was actually much more difficult. There was much less money raised that year. And because of the rising cost of airfare, the ride, the people who organized the ride for the 3 agencies involved were not quite certain if there would be a Paradise Ride 2006. So everyone came into Paradise Ride 2005 believing that that was the last year of the event, that we would never get together like that again. And so the mood was very somber, and it wasn't helped by the fact that it was raining every day. I don't mean just like drizzling. I mean it was coming down like you were in the shower, okay? It was just every single day, from day one to the last day of the event, it was raining. And it was just coming down in buckets, and it was really hard because when we were on Maui, the rain was coming down especially hard, and we had this ice-cold wind just blowing on us the whole time, and it was overcast, and we were all cold, wet, and miserable. And but it didn't make people want to give up. Nobody gave up. A few people crashed. One person had to go to the hospital, but nobody gave up because the rain made it too difficult to ride. And the end of the event was it was like a death in the family. That's how it felt. But we did get to meet people who benefited from our fundraising, local people here in Hawaii who were suffering with HIV and AIDS. Some of them talked about when they first diagnosed and living with it, and expressing their gratitude for our efforts. And we found out like a week or so after the event was over that there was not going to be a Paradise Ride 2006. So I have to say, though, that raising money for an AIDS charity was very difficult for me because I don't have a lot of friends who care about that issue very much. It is difficult, especially in a society like here in Hawaii, where people hear about fundraising for things like heart disease and cancer and tsunami relief and all these other things. And here I come with, would you like to donate some money to help people with an AIDS charity? And it was hard, especially to realize one of the worst things that can happen is people who pledge money during my fundraising would not come through with the donation. One person that I had asked for a donation, and he gave me one, was actually himself very politically and religiously conservative. He had expressed concern for children living with HIV. And about a week or so after he made his donation, he called me up on the phone. And he asked for his donation back. I asked him why did he want it back, and he said, well, because while I'm concerned about children with HIV, my money could also be used to benefit those adults, including the gays, who will benefit from this, and I don't think that I want to help those people. So I dug into my own pocket, because I already had sent the money in. I dug into my own pocket. I took out $25 and I gave it back to him. And he and I were friends up until that point. But after he told me that, after he said those words to me, I didn't really speak to him very much afterwards. Because it's hard when you have to do fundraising face to face people. You hear all kinds of things. People saying, well, I feel sorry for the blood transfusion people and the kids, but most of just gay men are just sleeping around and can't control themselves. They brought it on themselves. But they don't feel the same way about people who get lung cancer because they smoke, or people who get heart disease because they eat fatty foods their whole lives and never exercise. They don't feel badly for people who are paralyzed, they don't feel, lack of compassion for people who are paralyzed and the waist down because they got into a car and drove drunk. They don't, judge victims of other physical conditions and other illnesses, but people with HIV and AIDS, I found people extraordinarily judgmental. And when I saw this ugly side of people, it really made me lose hope. It made me think, I'm never going to go through this again. But still, yet, I signed up again in 2005, and I ran into many of the same problems. People pledging money and then not donating or getting the lecture. I didn't go back and ask any of the people who had, lectured me the previous year. I found a whole new group of people who lectured me. So best of luck to Deb Shell and people who are helping him out. If there's an auction, I might be auctioning off my Paradise Ride jerseys if anyone's going to collect a cycling jersey. Now, these are not like new off-the-shelf jerseys. These were actually worn at the event. I got this one here from 2005. The 2004 one I'm wearing right now. I'm about to get on the road soon. And this one from 2003. I wasn't really at the 2003 event, but they were selling them off. I wanted one. I bought it. So anyway, that is my video, and I wish Dev Shell and friends the best of luck.